Title: The Science Behind History's Greatest Accidents Intro. Every amazing feat of engineering, from the tallest skyscraper to the most incredible ship, is built on a foundation of science. But what happens when one tiny human error gets into the mix? A forgotten key, a word that's misunderstood, or a calculation that's off by a single decimal point. History has shown that these small mistakes can lead to the most catastrophic results imaginable. Today, we're digging into the science behind some of history's biggest accidents to uncover the fatal flaws and human errors that turn triumphs of ingenuity into epic disasters. Section 1. The Hyatt Regency, a Deadly Dance. Let's kick things off on July 17, 1981, inside the stunning atrium of the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Kansas City, Missouri. The hotel was a modern marvel, just a year old, and its lobby was a massive open space crisscrossed by elegant suspended walkways that seemed to float in midair. That night, a crowd of nearly 2,000 people had gathered for a popular weekly tea dance. Music was playing, people were laughing and chatting, and many of them had packed onto those floating bridges to get a better view. It was a perfect picture of a party. And then, at 7:05 p.m., it turned into a scene of absolute horror. Without any warning, a sharp crack echoed through the atrium. The fourth-floor walkway started to shudder violently, and then suddenly gave way. It plummeted down, smashing into the second-floor walkway right below it. The combined weight of concrete, steel, and people then crashed onto the crowded lobby floor. The disaster was instant and devastating, killing 114 people and injuring over 200 others in what became, at the time, the deadliest structural failure in American history. As rescuers worked for 14 agonizing hours through the wreckage, investigators started the urgent job of figuring out what went so terribly wrong. The answer they found wasn't some complex engineering mystery or a rare material defect. It was in a simple, last-minute design change. A change so small it was probably approved over the phone, without any formal checks. You see, the original design called for the two walkways to hang from the ceiling using a single, continuous set of steel rods. This design would have safely spread the weight of both walkways. But the company making the steel rods found this plan tricky. So, a new plan was suggested. Use two separate, shorter sets of rods instead. One set would hang the fourth-floor walkway from the ceiling, and a second, totally separate set would hang the second-floor walkway from the fourth-floor walkway's support beams. This seemingly small adjustment turned out to be a fatal miscalculation. It effectively doubled the load on the connectors of the fourth-floor walkway. Those support beams were now forced to carry not only their own weight and the people on them, but also the entire weight of the walkway hanging below. The investigation by the National Bureau of Standards concluded that the modified connection could barely support the weight of the walkways themselves, let alone the extra weight of all those people. It was a system that was doomed to fail from the very start. The Hyatt Regency disaster became a permanent case study in engineering ethics. It was a brutal lesson on how crucial communication and oversight are, and the massive responsibility that comes with changing a blueprint. A simple change, made for convenience, skipped all the rigorous checks of science and engineering, leading straight to a catastrophe and forcing sweeping reforms in building codes and professional standards. Section 2. The St. Francis Dam, the hubris of one man. For our next story, we're heading back to the 1920s in Southern California, a region desperate for water. To tackle the problem, Los Angeles built a massive concrete gravity dam in a remote canyon, designed to hold back an incredible 12 billion gallons of water. This was the St. Francis Dam, and it was the personal pride and joy of its creator, the famous and powerful chief engineer, William Mulholland. Mulholland was at the top of his game, a man so respected that his judgment was basically considered fact. When the dam was finished in 1926, it was hailed as another one of his triumphs. But there were warning signs right from the start. Cracks started to show up on the dam's face, and leaks began to appear. Mulholland checked them out himself and brushed them off as normal for such a huge concrete structure. On the morning of March 12, 1928, the dam keeper, Tony Harnischfeger, spotted a new muddy leak. a bad sign that the dam's foundation might be eroding. He called Mulholland, who came to inspect it with his assistant. After a 2-hour review, Mulholland declared the dam was perfectly safe. Just 12 hours later, 3 minutes before midnight, the St. Francis Dam collapsed. A wall of water as tall as a 10-story building exploded out of the canyon and roared 54 miles to the Pacific Ocean, destroying everything in its way. The disaster killed more than 400 people, wiping out entire families and towns. It remains one of the worst civil engineering failures in American history. So what was the fatal human error here? It was a disastrous mix of geology and arrogance. The investigation that followed found 2 huge flaws. First, the dam was built on a dangerously unstable foundation. The western side was on rock that turned soft and mushy when it got wet, while the eastern side was built on an ancient, massive landslide that nobody had even noticed. Modern analysis shows that as the reservoir filled up, the water pressure caused this old landslide to start moving again, which led to the dam's catastrophic failure. The science here points to a failure of due diligence. Back in the 1920s, geology wasn't considered as essential for big construction projects as it is today. Mulholland, an engineer who trusted his own experience above everything else, made a fatal mistake in picking the site. The coroner's inquest concluded that the responsibility for the disaster rested with Mulholland, saying that the construction and operation of a great dam should never be left to the sole judgment of one man, no matter how eminent. William Mulholland's career was shattered. At the inquest, he famously took the blame, stating, "If there is an error in human judgment, I was that human." The collapse of the St. Francis Dam led to immediate reforms, sparking the creation of California's dam safety program and new laws that required independent reviews of major engineering projects, making sure that one person's judgment could never again lead to such devastation. Section 3. The Titanic, a cascade of failures. And finally, we have to talk about the most infamous disaster in modern history, the sinking of the RMS Titanic on April 15, 1912. More than just a shipwreck, the Titanic was a symbol of industrial ambition, a ship many called unsinkable. Yet, on its maiden voyage, it hit an iceberg and sank in about 2 hours and 40 minutes, taking over 1,500 lives. For over a century, the story has been told as a simple tragedy of an iceberg and not enough lifeboats. But the science behind what happened reveals a much more complex chain of human errors, where a series of small decisions and design compromises added up to create an inevitable disaster. The first and most obvious human error was speed. The Titanic was sailing at nearly full speed through an area known to have ice. Multiple ice warnings had been radioed in from other ships, but not all of them were passed along to the bridge, and they were mostly ignored. The pressure to set a new speed record across the Atlantic overshadowed the clear and obvious danger. When the iceberg was finally spotted, it was already too late. But the collision wasn't what most people pictured. Recent analysis suggests the ship didn't get one single, long gash. Instead, the iceberg likely popped rivets and created a series of smaller holes along the hull. While these holes were small on their own, the damage stretched across 6 of the ship's 16 watertight compartments, and this is where a critical design feature, and the human error that compromised it, came into play. The Titanic was designed to stay afloat with up to 4 of its watertight compartments flooded. 6 was a fatal number. And there was another issue with those watertight bulkheads, which were supposed to be a key safety feature. To make the passenger decks feel more open and grand, the bulkheads didn't go all the way up to the main deck. As the first 6 compartments filled with water, the ship's bow was pulled down, letting water spill over the top of each bulkhead into the next one, just like water filling an ice cube tray. This design choice, made for looks, sealed the ship's fate. Finally, not having enough lifeboats was a catastrophic regulatory failure, but even the way the available lifeboats were handled was a mess. The crew wasn't properly drilled, and in the chaos, many boats were launched half-empty. The tragedy was made even worse by the fact that the radio operators on a nearby ship, the Californian, had shut down their radio for the night after being rudely dismissed by the Titanic's operator earlier. They completely missed the distress calls, The sinking of the Titanic wasn't a single accident. It was a cascade of failures, reckless speed, design compromises made for the sake of luxury, and outdated safety rules. The disaster became a powerful wake-up call, leading directly to the creation of the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea, SOLAS. This required 24-hour radio watches, enough lifeboats for everyone on board, and the creation of an international ice patrol. Lessons written in the icy waters of the North Atlantic. So, a modified drawing in a hotel, a dam built on shaky ground, and a ship sailing way too fast in the dark. These stories show us a pretty sobering truth. Behind every great engineering disaster, there's a human story. A story of a small mistake, arrogance, or an oversight that spiraled out of control. Science and engineering are precise, but they're practiced by people, and people aren't perfect. The legacy of these tragedies isn't just about the loss, it's about the lessons they taught us. The Hyatt collapse reinforced the need for peer review. The St. Francis Dam showed us the vital role of geology in construction. And the Titanic completely changed maritime safety forever. These failures force us to do better, to create tougher standards, and to build a culture of safety and accountability. They remind us that the drive for progress has to be balanced with caution and a deep respect for the unforgiving laws of physics. What do you think? Let us know in the comments which mistake you believe had the biggest impact. And if you found this look into the science of disaster fascinating, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more content exploring the triumphs and failures of human history. Thanks for watching.